the second part of Chapter 10. It's more specifically going to be talking about caregiving and guidance. Remember, children are young, and that the adults in their lives really need to be providing expressions of warmth and love as children are testing their boundaries, strategies for guidance and discipline, good communication, and appropriate expectations so that children know what's expected of them. Here's some examples of parenting styles from the classical research that has been done. It specifically looks at authoritarian, permissive, and authoritative parenting. Traditionally, authoritarian parenting is that parents have high behavioral standards, strict punishment of conduct, and little communication. On the flip side, the permissive parent is high in nurturing and communication, but little discipline, guidance, or control. Authoritative parenting, parents set limits, enforce rules, but are flexible and listen to their child. There are many other parenting styles that have been added, but currently there's a fourth style that is the neglectful and uninvolved parent. And this is often mistaken for the permissive, but this is where parents are a little bit indifferent to their child and they're unaware of what's going on in their child's lives. So parenting styles, a good balance of warmth and love and setting boundaries and limits is important. Children need to know that their parents are going to keep them safe and that they're going to provide them with boundaries. Children often don't know where the boundaries are, they don't know where the rules are, and children are young and inexperienced. So parents need to provide this information, to say it over and over again, to have appropriate consequences, and to definitely show that they love their child regardless of their child's behavior. Also, just be aware that with any research study, again, that there are some limitations. There have been some concerns about some of the traditional work with parenting styles, that they often don't include all economic, ethnic, and cultural groups, that there sometimes is more focus on attitude than daily interactions. Sometimes they're believed that there's no recognition of love with authoritarian parents, and that there's no recognition that permissive parents have verbal contents for guidance. And also they don't really describe and talk about the child's contribution. It's important also to understand cultural variations. Remember that parent influence in guiding children incorporates children's temperament, the parent's personality, but also the social and the cultural context for which the child is being raised. Culture is huge in how we guide and direct children, so that needs to be taken into account when understanding children's behavior. Gender awareness, how children learn what it means for them to be either a boy or a girl. This is very much influenced by culture, by parenting style, and also this is different than sexual orientation, to whom a child or an adult is sexually attracted. Traditionally, our theories have their own description about how children identify with their gender. For the psychodynamic, which included Freud and Erikson, is that they look at the history of that child, the childhood stages of development. Cognitive theories, which would include Piaget, is that how children identify with their gender awareness has to do with their understanding of their gender, their cognitive understanding. Sociocultural theories are going to stress the importance of cultural values and customs. Remember that it's the parents, friends, media, toys, clothing, children's activities, holidays, and cultural events that all influence how a child is introduced into their own cultural awareness and gender awareness. Remember that gender identification, gender stereotypes, gender messages begin before a child is born, when the parents are decorating the baby's room, the types of clothing they buy, the toys. And then as the child grows, it's the activities that the child's involved in, the expectations about how we interact with children. All of these send messages about what does it mean for that child to be either a boy or a girl. Social learning theory would say that children also are very good observers, and they watch other children, they watch other adults, and they get their cues about, gee, how am I supposed to be behaving or acting from watching these other interactions. Besides watching adult behavior, adults once again send very clear messages to children about who they're supposed to be by how they set up their environments. The development of moral development, in other words, how children understand what's right and wrong, again, is something that is guided by the environment in which the child is growing up in, increases between the ages of 3 and 6, and the capacity for empathy takes on different kinds of dimensions as that child understands a theory of mind and being able to put themselves into the position or the place of another person. Researchers who have looked at different types of aggression in children have categorized them into 4 categories. Instrumental aggression is to get something and to keep it. Reactive aggression is for retaliation. Relational aggression is insults or social rejection, and bullying aggression is unprovoked and repeated. How adults respond to aggression or other kinds of acting out with children needs to come from a platform where the parent really understands why the behavior is happening and who the child is. Trying to curb behavior, research states that physical punishment increases obedience temporarily, but also increases the possibility of later bullying, delinquency, anger, depression, and abusive behavior. Remember the power of role modeling. The best way to teach boundaries, rules, how to interact socially is to role model it yourself. Children watch adults in every situation, how the adult even answers the phone at dinner when somebody's trying to sell them something, how they handle those phone calls. So how we interact with people that we know and people that we don't know. Children are picking up on the social cues and the appropriate ways to respond. So there's a lot to be learned and discussed around discipline, and parents need to have good heart-to-heart talks about how they were disciplined as a child, what worked, what didn't, and even parents that grew up in the same areas are coming from different families, and we all have different experiences. And it's important that the understanding of the child and the situation are taken into account when setting guidance and boundaries with a child, and not just doing things that for guidance and discipline the way we were guided and disciplined as children. That is not a good way to go about setting boundaries and limits. Understanding why behavior happens is a result of looking at a child's developmental stage, understanding the child developmentally, their temperament, the child's temperament. How does that contribute to how they interact with others and their environments? Looking specifically too at that environment. Is that environment causing the behavior problems? Is the child at a place where they need to learn something? That the behavior is because children are inexperienced or they've never been in that situation before? Is there an unmet emotional need? When we have unmet emotional needs or we're under stress, a lot of times it comes out in our behavior. In addition to sleeping, eating, ways that we our patience as far as and our ability to concentrate too. So although this is not a full list, this gives a variety of things that parents really need to take into consideration when deciding why is this behavior happening and the best way to handle it. If it's an unmet emotional need or a stressor, punishing a child is not going to help that child. So when providing guidance and discipline, it's important that we understand how we were raised as a child and what worked and what didn't work, but that we get to know the child well. Parents also need to understand timeouts and how timeouts might be used appropriately, but are often misused. There are lots of good books out there. There's lots of good classes. There's lots of good information. And every child in a family is different. So the guidance that's provided for one child might not be necessary or needed or might not be appropriate for another child in that family. From a developmental standpoint, it's always best for the parent to explain to the child what the misbehavior was. It's also incredibly important to make sure that we separate out the behavior from how we feel about the child. Lecturing and developmentally younger children sometimes just will not be able to understand some of our exclamations as to why we're upset. But so you need to find ways developmentally to communicate that. And also that trying to reason with an upset child does not work. Often what you need to do is to help a child calm down, is to take them aside, sit with them, not as a punishment, to say, I'm going to sit with you and help you calm down. And then once the child is calmed down, then that might be a time when you can have a little bit of a talk. Disciplinary techniques that involve threatening to withdraw love and support and that rely on a child's feelings of guilt and gratitude to the parent are extremely cruel and inappropriate means of discipline. Never, never should we threaten to take our love away from that child. We separate out the behavior from who the child is. We might not like their behavior, but we still love the child. Appropriate guidance, it's not a one-size-fits-all. And this is one of the most challenging aspects of providing guidance that parents run into. So once again, it's important to take into the account who the child is, their development, culture, their relationships. It's very multifaceted. Parents need to have good conversations with each other and to explore guidance and discipline. It's not uncommon that cultural beliefs or the way that we were raised need to be adjusted, challenged, or changed. It's nice if these discussions can happen before a child is born. A lot of times they happen after the child's born and the parents are in the middle of needing to make decisions about the best way to guide and raise their young child. There's a lot of information out there, and knowing where to go to get this information is important. But there's new parenting classes, there's parenting classes, support groups, individual counseling, and college classes. And also, a lot of times, families that have a lot of experience can also shed light and also help new parents relax.